Imagine a world where the truth is stranger than fiction, where billionaires rewrite reality, and one man has the audacity to claim he's invincible. You know Vince McMahon, right? The evil genius behind WWE, the man who built an empire and transformed professional wrestling into a global phenomenon. But beyond the bright lights and roaring crowds, there's a darker side to Vince McMahon, a side where real-life Vince starts blurring with on-screen Vince. Welcome, WrestleDen fans, to today's deep dive into one of the most bizarre shoots in WWE history. Did Vince McMahon really lie his way to the top? Or is this just another kayfabe controversy spiraling out of control? Hold tight, because we're pulling back the curtain to reveal the puppet master himself. First, let's talk about the Netflix docuseries that promised to show us the real Vince McMahon. But even that project wasn't immune to his influence. Producers had to scrap 4 hours of interview footage. Why? Because Vince, the man who controlled every word, sounded like a frog. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Vince has built his entire career on manipulating the truth. Let's start with his biggest lie: WWE's sports entertainment narrative. In the 1980s, Vince rebranded professional wrestling as sports entertainment, convincing regulators that WWE was scripted and, therefore, shouldn't be subject to the same athletic commission regulations as legitimate sports. By doing this, he sidestepped paying expensive state licensing fees and health regulations required for real sports leagues. It saved WWE millions of dollars. Before Vince's rebrand, wrestling had always been presented as legitimate competition, with predetermined outcomes hidden behind the curtain. But Vince openly admitted it was all scripted. By selling this lie as entertainment, he turned what had been a sport into a billion-dollar showbiz empire, but also deceived many people in the process, including the wrestlers themselves. And that's just one example of Vince rewriting the rules. Whether it's dodging government regulations or bending the truth about his company's operations, Vince McMahon is the ultimate puppet master. Even his own wrestlers have been left in the dark. Remember Bret Hart? Let's not forget the infamous Montreal screwjob in 1997. Bret the Hitman Hart, a WWE legend, was set to leave the company for WCW, and Vince assured him he could keep his WWF championship until his final night. But during the live match, Vince changed the script without Bret's knowledge, instructing the referee to call the match early, making it look like Bret had lost. This betrayal became one of the most notorious moments in wrestling history. Vince's reason? Protecting his company, but at the cost of a legend's trust. How many other promises did Vince McMahon break to protect his empire? And if he could betray someone as loyal as Bret Hart, who else has he lied to? Let's talk about another major lie in Vince's playbook: his feud with billionaire Ted Turner, who owned WCW. Turner signed WWE's biggest stars, including Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, and Ric Flair, in an attempt to put WWE out of business. Vince famously accused Turner of trying to bankrupt him by stealing his talent. But here's the kicker: Vince had done the exact same thing years earlier. Back in the early 1980s, Vince raided the talent pools of local wrestling territories, signing their biggest stars like Andre the Giant and Rowdy Roddy Piper, effectively putting regional wrestling companies out of business. Vince McMahon didn't just inherit the WWE from his father, he systematically dismantled the territorial wrestling system, which had been the foundation of professional wrestling for decades. By the time Turner tried to compete, Vince had already destroyed his competition. So when Vince claimed Turner was a villain, the truth was, Vince had done the same thing, only more effectively. And Vince's manipulation didn't stop in the business world. His WWE programming blurred the lines between reality and fiction so well that fans couldn't tell the difference anymore. In 2007, after WWE aired a storyline where Vince died in a limousine explosion, the company actually received calls from the press and fans who believed the story was real. The FBI even contacted WWE to ensure McMahon was alive. But the most shocking twist came just days later. The storyline was abruptly canceled after the real-life tragedy of Chris Benoit's murder-suicide. Vince returned to television to address the crisis. For the first time, Vince had to drop the act and admit his own storyline had gone too far, just as real life spiraled out of control. Vince's manipulation of reality had dire consequences in this case. How far is too far when it comes to controlling the narrative? Vince got away with fooling the world, but at what cost? So, what's the final verdict? Is Vince McMahon the greatest villain in wrestling history? Or is the real-life Vince even more cunning than his on-screen character? His legacy is more complicated than just being a mastermind of wrestling. Vince McMahon's life is full of manipulation, deceit, and blurred truths. Let's not forget his darkest controversies. In recent years, Vince has faced a series of lawsuits alleging sexual misconduct and even human trafficking. The Wall Street Journal reported in 2022 that Vince paid over $12 million in hush money to 4 women who had accused him of sexual misconduct. These allegations come alongside long-standing claims from wrestlers that Vince created a toxic backstage environment. From the ring to the boardroom, Vince McMahon has shown that he's willing to do whatever it takes to stay on top, even if it means rewriting history. The stories are still being written, but one thing's for sure. Vince McMahon isn't just the villain in the ring. He's a puppet master behind it all. If you enjoyed this deep dive into wrestling's biggest puppet master, hit that subscribe button. Join the WrestleDen family, where we don't just watch wrestling, we live it.